Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar presented by Advice Sense Wealth. I am Sankalpo Pal. I take care of business development and client relations at Advice Sense Wealth. PMS AIF World is the platform created by Advice Sense Wealth to deliver informed investments in superior portfolios to investors. We as a wealth manager manage close to 400 crores in assets and across 100 families. So today is the day where we host IIFL investment managers and they will discuss their portfolio. So this is another step in the direction of informed investing for our investors. And without keeping all of you waiting, I will hand over the floor to Sashi Singh from the IIFL team, and accompanying her is Mitul Patel, the fund manager for IIFL Multicap PMS. Over to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. A very good initiative from PMS AIF World on informed investing. I will just take a few minutes to talk about the current situation and IIFL Multicap PMS that we run, and then hand it over to Mitul. IIFL Multicap PMS or IIFL AMC as such was established and launched with a sole objective of being a niche operator in a business to provide investors with options which may or may not be available elsewhere. So demand in the market in current situation maybe, or a gap that is there in the investing world. We endeavor to do that, and hence you will find that we do not have too many offerings. We are not AUM chasers, and we are alpha creators. We are leaders in the alternate investment business and are the largest AIF managers in the country. The benefit you get from investing in our schemes is that you get institutional investing benefits through the PMS or the AIF that we have. Today we are in a situation where it's an unforeseen thing, and I was hearing some of the leading fund managers conferences across the world, and everyone saying that you cannot predict what will happen now. Until the time we get a vaccine, this does not seem to be ending. Having said that, India has been into the lockdown for now close to 40 days, and we've all learned investing from home, and we're also efficiently doing that. We run this Multicap PMS, which has two variants, Multicap and Multicap Advantage. The difference being Multicap Advantage has a hedge built in it. Now, a hedge is what helped investors in saving their downfall in the current event. This is a black swan kind of event, and our Multicap Advantage PMS was positive 5% as of March end, when all other PMSs and listed equity funds were close to 20 to 25% negative. Our own Multicap PMS, which does not have a hedge, was also negative. Having said that, so we run this with a focused portfolio approach, about 30 stocks in the portfolio, with a core being financial sector. I will now hand it over to Mitul. Mitul has been with the AMC for over 5 years now. He has over 17 years of experience, was leading our equity research, and now looks after this portfolio. Mitul will explain to you the current market condition. In this market situation, how we are managing this portfolio to get the best for the investors. Over to you, Mitul.
Thanks a lot, Shashi, and hope everyone who's watching here are safe at home. And thank you, Sankalp and PMS AIF World, for having us over for this webinar. I would just like to kind of talk about the current COVID-19 situation and how, the current markets have been over the last 2 months. So obviously the number of cases globally and in India have been rising. And over the last week, India has actually added much more cases on a per week basis. And despite being in one of the most strictest lockdowns and the longest lockdowns globally. Last week, the government has classified the country into 3 zones, which is the green, red, and the orange zone. And post May 3rd, if you take a look at, post the lifting of the lockdown in certain green zones, which are zones where there are no meaningful cases or no new cases in the last 21 days. So there are 736 districts in India, and 41% of them are classified under the green zone. However, these do not materially contribute to much to the GDP. So on the GDP front, still 53% of the GDP is under the lockdown. Also on the banking front as well, 74% of the deposits and 83% of the credit in the country is in the red zone. So the flattening of the curve of the cases is vital to opening up the red zones. And we are keenly watching as to how these events unfold. And that's how we will be able to kind of see a road to recovery going forward. Coming back to what happened in March. So obviously this pandemic, as we can see, have led to a sharp correction in the markets. Nifty hit an all-time high in mid of January, and from its peak in mid-January, it fell roughly 38% in somewhere in March, which was just in a matter of 2 months. For the entire month of March, the Nifty was down 23%. And this COVID-19 has erased 3 years of returns for the markets. To put it in perspective, this drawdown that we have faced and the volatility, there were 22 days, trading days in March, and 16 days saw the index move plus or minus 2%. And there were just 6 days like that in the entire 12 months leading up to February. So, that is the kind of volatility we faced. And we also saw the largest ever intraday swing in the Nifty, in the month of March, intraday swing of 18.3%. We have obviously never seen a pandemic like this before. Something like this happened roughly 100 years back. I don't think anybody is there in the world, or not too many people who would have seen what had happened then. But something that we can draw from history is that, these kind of falls have happened before as well. In the last 34 years, when we looked at the Sensex, 11 times the Sensex has fallen more than 20%. So if you just take a simple division, that's once every 3 years, the market falls, 20% or more. And, we are down roughly 25% right now. And greater than 30% falls have happened roughly 7 times in the last 34 years. That's once every 5 years. Obviously, this one is different. We have not seen a crisis like this before. But all these drawdowns include all the previous crises that we have faced, including the 1991 economic crisis, the dot-com bust, and the global financial crisis of 2008. So the idea to tell you about this is that it takes roughly 2 years to recover to all-time highs from the bottom. And, it's impossible to say whether we are at the bottom yet, but the recovery to all-time highs would translate into a roughly an annualized return of 19% in 2 years. And even if we take the worst historical case that we have seen in the last 34 years, the bottom to peak would return, the return would be 12.5% annualized. So, though this is different, but, these kind of statistics, that we can go by looking at history, makes me slightly more optimistic. Now, coming back to April, March was unprecedented, but April was also unprecedented in the fact that the Nifty bounced roughly 15% and was up 15% in the month of April. In the US, for example, this has been the sharpest pullback sharpest pullback from a bear market in the last 50 years. So the ferociousness with which it has gone up also has been quite fast. So one of the reasons attributed to this is also the fact that all the central banks in the world have reduced interest rates and have announced a very large fiscal stimulus. Now, this fiscal stimulus in the US is roughly 11-12% of GDP, and it was announced roughly 2 weeks, since the problem started. Interest rates all over the world are either negative or almost zero, and that is also kind of giving a stimulus to the markets right now. So also we are awaiting a stimulus from our government as well. Hopefully, it has it can come up with a good plan for the corporates and the SMEs and individuals alike. Our fiscal math suggests that there is limited room for the government to maybe perhaps 1 to 2% of GDP incrementally. There is something that they can do unless they want to, if they do not want to stick to the prudence of the fiscal deficit percentage number. So so basically my point is, with interest rates being close to zero, India's interest rates have been historically low. Crude oil futures hit zero last month, and right now the crude prices are also very low, which augur well for India as well. And coming back to fundamentals, the valuations are also very compelling now. If you look at the BSE 200, which is our benchmark, roughly 60 to 65% of the stocks in the BSE 200 are close to 52-week lows and are trading at less than 1 times price to book. If you look at the index in its entirety, it is currently trading close to 2 times price to book. In 2008, this index kind of bottomed out at 2.5 times price to book. And to put it in perspective, this index has spent less than 5% of its time since its inception, less than 2 times book. So the history, when you compare it as taken in perspective with the valuation, also is in favor for medium to long-term equity returns, and the ingredients are in place. There is a lot of uncertainty around, and everyone is talking about gloom and doom. But things can be volatile in the coming months and quarters. There will be talks of job cuts, salary cuts, and companies are going to go through some problems as well too. We'll have to grapple with some problems and try to solve them. However, once the dust settles, I'm sure equities will bounce back. I would like to talk about our investment framework, since this is the first time we are speaking to you. So what we follow at IIFL is the SCDV framework, is what we call it, which is S for secular, C for cyclical, D for defensive, and V for value. Now, if you imagine imagine 4 quadrants, the way we define secular companies is companies that have shown 15% growth in profits and 15% ROE in 6 years or more out of the last 10 years. And these companies generally include the retail private banks, consumer discretionary companies, Then there are the defensive. There's a defensive quadrant, which we call D, where the ROEs are greater than 15%, but the profit growth is less than 15%. These are your classic IT companies and your classic consumer staple companies. Coming to cyclical companies, these are the companies which have shown cyclicality in their earnings and ROEs as well of 15%. But 6 years or more, they have either been in any of these two buckets. And these are your industrial companies, infrastructure companies, and downstream oil marketing companies. And lastly, where our allocation is always very low, is the value bucket, where they have not shown 15% growth or 15% ROEs over the last 10 years or 6 years or more. So these are your telecom companies or your upstream oil companies as well, and real estate. So, we are a bottoms-up asset management firm, but, there is this SCDV umbrella, which kind of helps us in a filtration process, where we see the entire portfolio under this umbrella. And generally, at any given point in time, we have a 40 to 60% allocation towards the secular category. As we see, we are more tailored towards, high ROE companies with long-term profit growth, where we can see consistent compounding going forward. So that's the 40 to 60% of the bucket. We are roughly 52% in the secular category, and the balance, depending on the sectors that we see are going to see a uptick, we balance it between cyclical and defensive. 20% of our fund is in defensive right now, and the balance is under cyclical and V. The only V we have is a telecom company, which is Bharti, and that is not more than 5% of the portfolio. Since we are a multi-cap fund, 53% of our positions are in large cap category, and the balance is under mid cap and small cap. Generally, when we take a portfolio approach, we believe that India has a long-term growth potential, and one of the sectors that will lead the growth in this to help enable this growth is the financial sector. So we have always been slightly overweight in the financials on the financial sector. We are roughly 31% weightage in financials. The top three names within the financials that we own are HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, and Bajaj Finance. I will talk a little bit more about the financial sector considering this current environment that we are in. I would just like to say that obviously financial companies, banks and NBFCs are leveraged businesses, and generally they mirror the health of the economy and the corporates and the consumers in the country. So large corporate lending businesses, if you must have noticed over the last 7-8 years, have gone through multiple NPA cycles. And, whether it's road, power, minings and metals since 2013 or 14. And what you have seen over the last, so many years is that, most corporates have sort of deleveraged their balance sheets. And what has happened on the flip side is the fact that, retail leverage has gone up. Households in India have leveraged up, with the retail credit to GDP increasing from 10% to 15% over the last 7-8 years. This has predominantly been driven by favorable demographics, rising middle class and easy access to credit, and technology has also played a good role in this. Because of this lockdown and the likelihood of salary cuts and job losses coming through, there has been a significant knockdown of prices, stock prices and valuations across the financial services landscape, whether it is a corporate lender or whether it's a retail lender. These businesses have taken a hit on their stock prices, and perhaps considering the short-term uncertainty, rightly so. So one thing to look at, given this tough outlook, is that a lot of large, well-diversified, well-capitalized banks or NBFCs are going to come out from this downturn and emerge stronger for the next cycle. And you will always see, they started with the NBFC crisis as well, roughly 18 to 20 months back, where we saw a few NBFCs, NBFCs shutting down. Even one of the large banks also face certain issues, and this will create a much larger market share, which anyway these private entities were taking and eating away from the weaker ones. So that is what we see in the financial sector. Obviously, investors are concerned for the SME sector as well, and considering that the moratorium that the government has announced will weigh in the short term as to how the recovery plays out. And as we mentioned, we have been overweight the consumer lending banks. We think it's a structural growth opportunity over the next decade. And all the names that we own, including these three that I mentioned, are good franchises with superior managements and have adequate capital to withstand any of the shocks that may come across. So, one of the names that I would like to talk about is HDFC Bank. Obviously, it does not need any introduction. So, they have had their latest they have announced the latest quarter results as well, and they went into good details as to what kind of exposure they have on the retail side, on the unsecured side, and on the corporate side. One of the things to mention about HDFC Bank is it is one of the largest salaried accounts banks in the country. It has roughly close to 50-55% CASA ratio. And, the salaried accounts, they have the highest market share in the salaried accounts of the top 100 corporates in the country. So, the street is generally worried about their unsecured portfolio and on the retail side, on their personal loans, etc. So, it is very easy to, give out, in financial services, give out money and give out a loan. The toughest part is the recovery portion of it. HDFC Bank has the largest in-house collection staff or bench or strength in terms of employees than any other bank in the country. Unlike their peers, also, some of them have a significant amount of employees on the collection side, but it's not all in-house. So that is one of the most important things about HDFC Bank is whether it's on the corporate side or on the retail side, we see that their collection efficiency will be much more superior than some of the weaker players in the market as well. There are a lot of their unsecured portion in terms of the personal loans that they have given out, which is a decent percentage of their portfolio, is also given to the salaried accounts as well. And also within that, a decent majority percentage of them are to these top 100 corporates whose salary accounts they are part of. So they have a tremendous amount of long-term data that they have collected, the spending patterns of these individuals. So it gives us much more comfort in terms of how this is going to play out for them in the medium to long term. Of course, in the short term, everybody is going to see a spike in NPAs and credit costs. But over time, as the country starts opening up, I'm sure they will do a good job in terms of the recovery, and we will come out stronger in this. On the corporate side, also, generally, if you take a look at other banks, other large banks as well, in their commentary they talk about the fact that their BB or minus rated book or BBB or minus BBB or below book is XYZ percentage of their total book. But HDFC Bank, when you hear them or when you meet them, you will not hear this sort of a language from them. They have a exposure to AA minus or plus kind of rated corporates, and majority of their loans are towards working capital. The term loans that they give out is very low, and is working capital finance, where they have a history with these clients as well. And the NPAs there are also not that substantial. On the valuation side as well, on HDFC Bank, on the valuation basis, it is now at a much lower level than it was in the last 10 years. And considering the growth that they will come out stronger after this and will grow faster than they have over the last few years, also gives us comfort on the valuation side. So that is on HDFC Bank, one of the banks that I was going to talk about. The second biggest sector in our portfolio is healthcare. I know a lot of funds, etc., have increased the healthcare exposure post this pandemic, but we have always been overweight in healthcare before COVID-19 as well. We are roughly 16 to 17% weightage towards this sector, and we broadly own we own 4 names within this. I would like to split this into 2 buckets. There are 2 names that we own, which are MNC pharmaceutical companies. And since our exposure to consumer staples is less, these 2 companies sort of, in a way, in their growth, in their ROE, in their free cash flow conversion, exhibit characteristics which are akin to a consumer company. So one of the companies that we own in this, the 2 names that we own here are Procter & Gamble Health and Abbott India. Both these companies were added much before COVID-19, and they have done exceedingly well for us in the last 2 months and in general as well. They are almost at their all-time highs, both of these names. I would like to talk a little bit more about Abbott India because it is an exciting company. It is one of the largest MNCs in India in the pharma space. 60% of their portfolio is in the chronic side of things, and the balance is in the acute side. Top therapies for them are women's health, gastro, metabolics, and CNS. 60 to 65% of their brand sales are in the top 10 brands, and they have the best field force productivity than any of its MNC peers. Now, one of the things about brands in pharmaceuticals and in general as well in consumers is that the brands that they have are sort of self-fulfilling. They have the largest market share in the spaces that they operate. They have a substantial bargaining power and influence over the doctors as well. And if you take a look at one of their products, which is Thyronorm, which is for thyroid, it is very difficult once you are under this prescription to switch to another product or another medicine of similar nature. So the body reacts differently if you switch. Hence, the doctor will continuously, prescribe the same medicine. Generally these things don't go away, and these are lifetime diseases which you have to perhaps take for your lifetime. they own 27 brands, which are mega brands of 50 crores or more. And one of the good things that have happened with this company over the last 3 to 5 years is obviously Abbott is an MNC with their parent being a global pharmaceutical company, and they've started adding products from their global portfolio into this listed company as well. And the aim is to introduce 100 products from this global portfolio as well over the next 5 years. So these brands, Thyronorm, Dufaston, Augmentin, Cremofen, Allegra, these kind of brands, which are, mega brands, will keep on getting bigger. And there is a multiplier effect that keeps happening as, more and more things get consumed. Also, Indians generally are, consume a lot of sugar, and they're much more diabetic as well. And, Abbott also kind of distributes or markets and sells Novo Nordisk diabetic products as well, where Novo Nordisk is the biggest player in India as well in diabetes and globally. So there too, the long-term growth potential of this business is also pretty exciting. And lastly, both these companies, Procter & Gamble Health and Abbott, with their high free cash flows, no leverage at all, net cash businesses, are shareholder friendly as well. So we have seen Merck, Procter & Gamble Health last year, they gave out a very high dividend as well. It was one time, but they are very shareholder friendly when it comes to distribution of profits. So that is something I would like to talk about, which is on pharmaceuticals. The third sector, which we are much more bullish on, which we see as a sunrise sector in the future, is the specialty chemical sector. This too, over the last 2 years, we have been quite positive on this sector. The two names we own there are SRF and PI Industries. And, this is a sunrise sector because, considering what is happening, this transition from China to India was anyway happening in the specialty chemical sector before COVID-19. But what we see is that, global customers, who rely on China for their supply chain, will not keep their eggs in one basket anymore. And slowly we are seeing as well over the last few months as well, the inquiries of these customers into India has been rising thick and fast. And this will be the new world order that will emerge post COVID-19, where India will benefit substantially in this. And what India also kind of brings to the table is, a little more higher value add chemicals, not just commodity chemicals as well. And there too, if I may, just like pharmaceuticals, there are very few companies of scale that can benefit from this. A customer wants to give a 500 to 1,000 crore order for the long term to a company, will need a company of the size of the names that I mentioned, and there are a few others as well who will benefit from this. We have seen another company in specialty chemicals who have backed 10-year, 20-year contracts as well. And, our analysis and our talks with other people also show that, these kind of contracts, maybe perhaps not of these sizes, but will continue in the future. And considering that the interest rates being very low, the trust by the government in terms of giving out land to these kind of industries where they will displace China as well, will be keenly watched. And there is no reason why India can't be one of the biggest chemical producers in the world. Obviously, China will be a substantial portion of the global supply chain in the chemical space, but India has a very small market share right now. So India is just a 3 to 4% market share. So when we look at the fact that if 3% can just double over the next decade or so to 6%, that means a tremendous amount for these kind of companies, and that's why we feel that this is going to be a sunrise sector in the future. And just generally on the health of the portfolio, what I would like to mention is that excluding financials, we don't own, don't have too much leverage built into the companies that we have. So during uncertain times such as this, over the next 6 months to 1 year, where there'll be uncertainty of cash flows, it is better to stick with unleveraged names. most of the names that we own in our portfolio, whether it's a pharma company, IT companies, or obviously net cash companies, we own an auto ancillary company. One of our chemical names is a net cash company. So, there is some sort of solace when it comes to the balance sheet. Profit and loss, obviously the profit and loss statement will be up and down, but what will make the companies emerge stronger is the balance sheet. And that is why, most of our names that we own in the portfolio have minimal to no leverage. Lastly, I would just like to say that, this is the right time to increase allocation to equities, though it might intuitively not make sense right now, but 2-3 years down the line, I'm sure equity as an asset class will do much better. So with that, I would just like to hand it over to Shashi to take this forward.
Thank you, Mitul, for this elaborate discussion and explanation on the portfolio. And I would like to reiterate that where Mitul ended, while it is a tough time for investors, but it's a tough time across all asset classes. And the only way our wealth creation objective will be achieved is being in the right class. We will need some patience, but during this time, it makes sense to allocate and remain invested in equities. This time will come and go. We've seen 2008, we've seen earlier crashes, and this just fades off. But what is most important as an investor is to stay invested in the right asset class. While the fund manager will keep churning the portfolio to ensure that the right stocks are picked to generate that alpha. And at IIFL AMC, as we have mentioned, that alpha generation is the core focus of all our portfolios. We would request everyone to stay invested and add on as we see dips. We'll get a lot of opportunities to add on. I would like to also share over here that we are the first AMC who's started accepting PMS applications totally online. So today you can sit at home and apply or open a new account with IIFL PMS without stepping out of the house or without taking a printout. You may get in touch with your advisors, or the advisors can get in touch with IIFL AMC, and this will be there. It is our endeavor to be ahead of the curve on the digital wave, on ensuring that the customers get the best and don't miss out in any kind of conditions. We will continue to do that. We will now leave it open for Q&A. Sankalpo.
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you, Mitul. Mitul, it was really engaging and really interesting to hear your data points and your perspective on the investee companies, specifically with pharma, because a lot of people are talking about pharma, but you actually narrated the story with your portfolio in pharma. So, we'll begin with the first question, and actually this is a very interesting question, which is, so right now when we saw March 2020 portfolios fell, one after the other fell around the same way that, the market did. And when April 2020 happened, the rally or the rebound got portfolios in the same way that the market reacted. So the question is, how do we differentiate, and how do we know that this portfolio performed better than the other, or the portfolio performed better than the market is the question. How to judge the performance, or how to look at the performance in isolation is the question. Mitul or Shashi, anyone of you can choose to answer.
Sure. No, so obviously, there are obviously a lot of funds out there, and I think a month or two is not whether it's our portfolio or anyone's portfolio is not the right time frame to judge this. So one of the ways to look at it is we were always overweight financials. So one of the way to judge it is that we have actually not, even though there have been a significant drawdown in some of our stock prices in the financial sector, we have not materially changed our stance on it. Now when we were ranked amongst the top 3 funds last calendar year, the stocks that kind of helped deliver this performance was one of them was Procter & Gamble Health, and there were 3-4 financial names as well. So there is one microfinance company that we own, which kind of tripled in value. as well, and now it has fallen. But the idea is not to judge it, in terms of how what has happened when we fell in March, or what happened when we went up in April. The idea is to look at judge any portfolio in terms of what the fund manager or what the strategy is, and how it's going to deliver, how it has delivered in the past, and how it is going to deliver in the future, and how quickly, or what's the churn, or how quickly are the fund, or is the fund manager kind of changing the strategy. So our core to our belief is that financials are going to do well. The names that we own will outperform when we are out of this problem as well. And these are the ones that will lead the returns as well. If you take a look at what has happened in Nifty, for example, Nifty has, I think, 28% weightage in financials. And if you take a look at all the large companies that have come out over the last 3-4 years, whether it's via IPO or anything of that sort, they are all mega caps and they are all financial names. Okay, the weightage of financials in the Nifty over a long period, over a medium to long term, is going to go up. The likes of Bandhan Bank or HDFC Life, etc. All these eventually will come into the index, and that will bring up the weight of the financials in the portfolio. To expect financials to not do well over a long period of time in India, especially with these names, you will not see material returns from the Nifty going forward.
I'd like to add here that people could look at sort of COVID-proof portfolio, and this is the time not to be Casanova with your investments. So you could look at safer stocks or safer portfolios, large cap buyers. Even we as a team are looking at companies which are very strong balance sheets, very low debt, and such companies will fare better than normal companies which will be struggling to pass through this downturn. So a large cap biased portfolio, a safer portfolio. Even in financial services sector, like Bajaj Finance today is the most well capitalized company. HDFC Bank in the banking sector is good. Yeah.
Summarize portfolio over performance, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll move to the next question.
Performance is a byproduct of the portfolio, isn't it?
Perfect. Absolutely. So we'll move to the next question, Sashi. So Mitul and Sashi, take some time and dwell upon the multi-cap advantage portfolio, because people want to know about this, and this is a unique part to your portfolio. So over to you. Just let us, take some time and explain the advantage and how that portfolio fares with the added, hedging strategy.
Yeah, so multi-cap and multi-cap advantage, from an equity stocks point of view, the portfolio is identical. We do not differentiate in the equity holdings for both the portfolios. The only difference is in multi-cap advantage, when you invest, only 94% of your portfolio or 93% of your portfolio gets invested into equity stocks in the proportionate weights. The balance amount is used to buy 3-year put option. So what we do is 3-year Nifty put options we buy for the client, and that helps shield against downfalls in the market. Now, this is not a pure hedge. This is a sort of fabricated hedge, we can say, wherein because you all know that options have time, decay, and value. So today, if you bought an option 3 months back, and if the market falls, you don't get, if market falls by 10%, your option is not up by 10%. But if there's a sharp fall, like the current fall, you get a relatively better value for your options. So currently what we've done is, in our portfolio in multi-cap advantage, generally if you take so for us in multi-cap advantage, the minimum investment amount is 27 lakhs as per earlier regime, and not 25, because each Nifty lot put option of 75 Nifty would cost around 8 to 9 lakhs. So we had 3 put options in every portfolio. we've sold, or you can say booked profit for 66% of that, which is 2 put options have been sold and we're still holding 1. Currently, we're not accepting money in multi-cap advantage because the cost of put option has, which used to be about 5.5 to 6.5%, has gone up to as high as 10 to 12%. So it makes no sense to buy put options. Currently, we're advising investors to come in multi-cap PMS. And whenever we start buying put options again, we'll allow a switch from multi-cap to multi-cap advantage PMS.
Mithul, anything to add to that, or we move to the next?
Yeah, just in one line, I would just say that, multi-cap advantage is basically you're buying a good quality equity portfolio with insurance.
Very candid. Okay, so we'll move to the next question. So this is again a question pertaining to valuations. So Warren Buffett often uses this indicator as market cap to GDP. So this is at a multi-year low. What implication do you think that holds, Mithul and Shashi? And what is essentially its relevance?
Its relevance is pretty high. So generally in bull markets, things have gone over 100%, 125% as well. And actually in a falling market such as this, or in such an uncertain market, I think PE ratios, etc., are it can be random. But I think that a couple of things that there are good indicators of, whether it's oversold or whether there is too much bearishness are two variables, right? Two factors, which is one is price to book. And the second one is this market cap to GDP. I think roughly we are close to 50%, plus or minus 5%. So I think, this is an extremely low number right now, considering that, maybe a year from now, the economy will grow as well. And the fact is that the profits also, the market cap, cannot remain at 50% if we are going to have any sort of equity market returns going forward. Also, the second thing I would like to say is that, when I mentioned it in my opening remarks, is that, the price to book factor in these sort of markets is a much more better predictor, or a much more better tool to kind of analyze where we are, considering the fact that, we are close to 2 times book or little below 2 times book. And, because, generally to understand the value of a company is about net worth, right? And what kind of money you're generating on that net worth. So, both these indicators that this market cap to GDP and price to book are at, multi-year lows, or maybe at the very low levels, and have not spent too much time there in the past. Yes, this is a different world we are in right now in the short term. But, if anybody wants to have a slightly positive view, then these two are a good indicators that, these should rebound from these levels. Shashi, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I would just like to add that historically we've seen that whenever you are below 2.5 or 2 price to book, the market stays there for less than 5% of the time, which means that the rebound is very fast, and we are currently at that. So it's a time to look at investments.
Sure. Thank you. So the next question that we take is going to be, so the question is, India as a country is very financials heavy. We understand that. Pharmaceuticals is also one of the major exports from India. The other major export from India is IT. So in your portfolio, and vis-a-vis the index, we see that you are underweight on IT. So your specific thoughts on this, and yeah, please.
Sure. So we are slightly underweight. We are not particularly too underweight on the IT sector. There we own a few names. We own Infosys there. So the writing is still not on the wall. When you take a look at IT, there are a couple of things. Which one tailwind for the IT industry is the currency. Obviously, the Indian rupee is depreciated, and that will kind of be a little more, give them a little bit of cushion. I think the way to kind of look at it is, I think the IT companies are kind of factoring in a V-shaped recovery. Most of their business are global customers in the US or Europe, and the way the prices and the earnings are uncertain for them, will be a little more, tricky for them going forward over the next 6 months to 12 months, because, not all contracts of theirs are fixed price contracts. Okay. So, when in times when, if you take a look at some large retailers in the US are going bankrupt, like last 1 week, I think J. Crew and Neiman Marcus have filed for bankruptcy. Secondly, one of the largest sectors that IT caters to is BFSI, even for large companies like TCS and Infosys. Now, these large banks, etc., in the US are going to cut spends, and the discretionary IT spend could be cut, and there could be force majeure, in these clauses where something that you were doing for $100 could be done for $10 for $90. So pricing related pressures could be there. But obviously, what gives you comfort is that these are rock solid balance sheet plays as well, in terms of large percentage of their balance sheet and cash as well. So that's why we are slightly underweight on IT, because things are evolving quite quickly there. And considering what happened when Trump when he won last time, his rhetoric on IT companies, H1Bs, etc., was much stronger. And he's coming up for re-election in November. So a couple of things at play, and it could be very volatile from a political angle as well, and from a business standpoint as well. So that's why we are little bit cautious on IT.
Thank you. Well explained. Thank you, Mitul. So, Sashi and Mitul, next question is a bit different. Wish list from the government, if any, in these unprecedented times. If you had to make a wish list from the government, what would they be?
Mitul, you want to start?
Yeah, so
let's keep liquidity aside, because liquidity the government has tried to pump in. So we'll keep liquidity aside, and apart from that.
So, I think we did some rough math here. So I think, and this is something which obviously, so if you just take, I'm just going to keep this short, is if you just take the total quarterly interest payment of all the loans that are there in the country, right from giving the loans to Reliance Industries, right from a microfinance loan of 10,000 rupees. The total quarterly interest that the country pays to these banks is roughly, I think, 30 or 40 billion dollars. Okay, this is a large number, but I think if something along those lines, obviously you can weed out the fact that companies with greater than 5,000 crores or 2,000 crores of loans, etc., will not be exempted or something like that. If there is some sort of an interest relief from the government, not a moratorium, some sort of an interest relief, or a first loss assurance by the government that whenever the banks lend to these players who need the money to jumpstart their business, the first loss of 10-15% will be guaranteed by the government. That sort of a thing will be actually a real booster in terms of confidence and in terms of resuming our journey back to normalcy. So I think that is if I really had to be a kid in a candy store, I would ask that.
Thank you, Mitul. Sashi, your take.
Yeah, absolutely. See, today we are in unprecedented times, and at this moment, if you see each individual or each person he's struggling with is, and we've not seen things coming yet. We've just seen a lockdown, but the effects of the lockdown will come. We have seen a lot of job losses will come in, and a lot of salary cuts will come in. At this time, giving a moratorium on loans makes no sense. We have to erase 1 quarter from the country, and which runs from RBI to the end person. So instead of a moratorium where the customer still has to pay an interest when he's not getting the salary, is that he should just not be asked to pay that interest for that period till the time we get back on track. And we're going to witness a lot of stress on this side. So that's the only demand that one should have.
Sure. So we'll take a couple more questions. The first question that we take is manufacturing as an industry, okay, is often talked about seeing a shift to India from China. Any allocation to that particular part in your portfolio apart from specialty chemicals, Mitul?
So of course we are specialty. Most of the businesses except for financials and IT companies are manufacturing businesses. So we have an auto ancillary player as well within the portfolio. We have a contract manufacturing coffee maker in the portfolio as well. We have pharma company, we have specialty chemical companies. We have L&T also in the portfolio, which is an industrials play. We have certain diesel gensets diesel genset manufacturer as well. So yeah, and lately in the month of May we have added one company as well which is into manufacturing. So it is a core to any economy. But we would like to back players which obviously have the returns on capital that can be generated through manufacturing.
Okay, thank you, Mitul. So the last question that we take is Shashi mentioned that buy COVID-proof portfolios. So I would like to learn that how is, or if at all, IIFL preparing for a second phase of lockdown sometime maybe in the winter? And if you had to make your portfolio COVID-proof, how would you do it then?
I think apart from, honestly, in winter, if we have another lockdown, then I don't think any portfolio will. There won't be any COVID-proof portfolio to that extent. But obviously, just logically, I don't think you need to be a fund manager or anything to answer this. I think logically, what we have seen is, as we see, right, essentials, pharmaceuticals, those kind of industries are going to be little less affected. But obviously, you can't have 100% of your portfolio into the consumer staples and. I think what you can do logically is to own these companies, have a decent allocation to them, and we are sitting on some cash as well and waiting for deployment into some of the high quality names that we always wanted to buy and are coming at reasonable prices. So I think that is the idea, if to have certain cash buffer during these uncertain times, and have a higher allocation towards a defensive sort of sectors, and 20-25% of our allocation is defensive, and that's what you can do. You can't have everything as into pharma and consumer staples. So I think that's the extent to which we can go to.
Sure. Shashi, any view on that, or should I take another quick question?
No, we can take another question.
Perfect. So FMCG participation in the portfolio, Mitul. Typical pure play FMCG participation in the portfolio appears to be lower, A. And B, then the B part of the question is, going ahead, if financials are trimmed in the index, is IIFL planning to similarly take a new look at financials in the portfolio?
So I'll answer the second question first. I don't think there'll be any material deviation from where we are right now, to be honest. We are 31.5%, maybe a percent or two here and there. I don't think you will see us being 20% financials, for example. Some of our peers are as well, which is fine. But I don't think we'll see a material drastic change in this part, on the financials part of it, even if whatever the index does. But our view is that the weight will over time be up as well. On the second part, on the FMCG part, that's a correct observation that we are a bit low on that. But in my opening remarks, I mentioned is that, FMCG is obviously, valuations we never thought were compelling there. And there are certain names which are cheap in FMCG, but they are cheap for a reason. So we have not touched those. But what we have done is that we have actually managed quite well, whether it's in the mid cap or the small cap category, to deploy money in certain non-consensus names like Procter & Gamble Health. The stock is up, I think, 3 or 4 times over the last 2 years. And these companies sort of exhibit these characteristics. These are, if you X out the cash of Abbott India, it's 100% ROE business. Or close to 100% ROE business, which is similar to HUL, and you were getting it at a cheaper price, and it has delivered actually better than certain FMCG names, even the blue chip names. We would love to own certain names in the FMCG space, but we are looking at the the right time or the right valuations. So, but I think might see some incremental allocation towards consumer discretionary, which is more consumer in nature. So, yeah.
Shashi, anything to add?
I'd like to add that, see, this is a very general gyan for the investors, that an investor has to select a fund manager and then stick to the fund manager and let the fund manager do what he's doing. As a fund manager, what he has to do is to select a portfolio and keep striving to get the same stock at a better price in such markets. So what Mitul also mentioned is that we have a shopping bag ready and we have cash in our coffers ready. What we are trying to do is get the best price for the investors and buy those stocks. As you're all aware that in PMS, we can buy stocks, we can hold cash, unlike a mutual fund. It gives a little more flexibility to the fund manager to manage the portfolio, and that's what we are doing. So you get a safer portfolio, you get a concentrated portfolio, and you don't get a 50-60 stock diversified portfolio here, and you stay put and stay tight, you get your returns.
Thank you, Shashi. Thank you, Mitul. Thank you to the audience. You've been wonderful and patient for tuning in. You can know more about the IIFL Multicap and Multicap Advantage portfolio at our website, pmsaifworld.com. Thank you all. Thank you, Mitul. Thank you, Shashi.
Thank you so much. Really
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.